Junkie Radio with Gorgeous George and Gold. This is what we doing while we do it, baby. We rollin'!
Covering MMA from all over the world, this is the premier stop for all your combat sports needs. MMA Junkie Radio, the only show broadcasting live from the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino in the fight capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. The lights are on and the mics are hot. It's time to get your MMA fix, junkies. Take it away, Big John.
Gorgeous George and Goes, are you ready? Junkie Nation, are you ready? Well, let's get it on.
From the fight capital of the world inside the beautiful Mandalay Bay Racing Sportsbook, you are listening to MMA Junkie Radio. I am Goes, Gorgeous George, and Dan Tom are not here today. But I'll tell you what, Gorgeous George will be back tomorrow. Dan Tom will be back on Friday. But manning the ship, Richard Hunter.
Hey, second day in a row.
2 days in a row. We still got Josh. I'm hearing other voices in the background, too. What? There's somebody else back there, Josh, with you? Somebody new?
No, that's it, man. Just me.
Just
myself
Josh.
and I.
All right. Well, this trio worked out pretty well yesterday, so I got a good feeling about it today.
I had a good feeling about it, too. It was a fun show yesterday. I'm glad you got in here, Richard. It's always a fun time with you.
Always happy to be here.
So we got some big news, and I want to jump right into it. I want to get some people to sound off. There's a couple things going on. There's this thing called UFC 236 that we haven't really talked too much about because of the drama going on in the world of mixed martial arts. But you can call us at 877-FIGHT-93. That's 877-344-4893. If you want to talk about the card or you want to talk about this big news that we broke on MMA Junkie, BJ Penn issued restraining order. The mother of his children alleges years of physical abuse, sexual abuse. It's not something you want to wake up to, especially on the heels of stuff going around with Conor McGregor, TJ Dillashaw. Man, it's like non-stop in the sport. And this is a sport that's relatively new that I constantly have to defend against kind of the old school friends of mine that love baseball, basketball, football, hockey. By the way, hockey playoffs start today.
All the ones where there's never been instances of domestic violence.
All that just kind of gets brushed under the rug because those sports have been there for a long time. But it's every day. It's something new.
Yeah, it is. And, I don't know if it's better from a pure PR standpoint if you get caught up in one of these things to be the only person that's currently accused of it. It used to seem like that would be really bad, like you would want to kind of blend in with the wallpaper. Mm-hmm. But nowadays, I'm not sure that that's not worse because of the stigma and the current climate. I'm not sure it's not worse that you kind of get lumped in with any other offender, accused or proven, because especially, and I'm not talking particularly about BJ Penn's case, but if this comes up with someone else and there are any kind of extenuating circumstances that are Tony Ferguson's a good example. That's not a guy who's being accused of domestic abuse. He's got some mental things going on, but you haven't heard his wife say, for example, what BJ Penn's girlfriend is saying. But in broad strokes, when you start talking about the cops showing up at the house and people fearing for people's mental stability and things like that, you're getting lumped in with a bunch of other names.
It's tough, man.
It's a bad time.
Very, very bad time. But I'll tell you what, the man who wrote the story here on MMAjunkie.com, Stephen Marrocco, he will be joining us soon. And he's going to tell us the particulars in the case. We can kind of point you in the direction of what we already know. And I'm sure a little bit more news, as in all these big stories throughout the day. A few more things come out here and there. But as you mentioned, I mean, some pretty bad stuff. If you've been in and around the sport behind the scenes, you hear things now and again. So there's certain things that come up about fighters that you go, oh, okay, I've heard a few things here and there that this kind of falls in line with. And then some, they just catch you by surprise. BJ Penn, whenever you talk to him in person, nothing but class. I mean, he's always a nice guy. But you hear from different people who have worked with him before that the word that I would always hear is he's different. He's strange.
Eccentric.
Eccentric, yeah. But I've never really heard this type of stuff. But verbal abuse, I mean, that happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
But some of the other stuff, I mean, drugs, cocaine is kind of the main drug that has been alleged here. Now, all these things come out of online court records that Stephen Marrocco was able to pull. And in the story, it seems like this stuff kind of caught the attorney off guard, BJ Penn's attorney.
Mm-hmm.
So this is stuff that, goes back months. And BJ Penn's got to fight, for crying out loud.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know how you could deal with something like this. I have something dumb happen in my life, and it throws me for a loop for weeks. This guy's got to fight, and he's got to deal with this on the back end. And he hasn't been too successful in his fights as of late. I don't know what the hell's going to happen here, but I'm gonna read you some of these quotes, okay? And this is from his significant other. I woke up one night to him scared because he got cocaine on our oldest daughter. She was freaking out, and he was freaking out, and he wanted to commit suicide. Him and his friends did cocaine in the bathroom all night, while me and my children were in the room, and his niece and auntie were in the living room, she wrote. I mean, this is insane stuff. This is a guy that performed at the highest level, too.
Yeah.
If all these things are true, how the hell did he do all that?
Well, where that's concerned, let's pull back the curtain just a little bit.
Okay.
Because I know you can probably do it about as well as I can. There's probably a lot of people listening who are newer to the sport. I know when I started following MMA, I used to think that every fighter must have like a 24/7 minder next to them that would analyze everything before they ingested it, because of course they would never take an unauthorized supplement, let alone an illegal drug. I mean, exactly what you just said. How in the world could they perform at the highest level and do these things? I thought they must have that minder next to them. I thought they must be completely on top of their public persona, because they realize that they're in a sport that, like you said, gets stigmatized for violence and brutality and things like that, and they knew that they had to rise to a higher standard. And then you get around fighters, not all of them, I'm not even saying most of them, but some of them. You get around and you go, wow, that guy will put anything into his mouth that somebody puts in his hand.
Yeah.
Or that guy, what do you mean that guy is a regular drug user or an alcoholic? How in the world can they do that? Like you just said. Well, they can. And sometimes what, and I'm saying this is the case with BJ Penn. I don't have any inside information on that, but I just know that quite a long time ago, my naivete on that aspect of it went away. Because what I learned was, it's kind of like, that girl is so hot. How can she be on meth? Well, it's because it hasn't caught up to her physically yet. She has good genetics to look that hot, and she's going to continue to look that hot for a while until it does eventually catch up with her. And I think in the pro athlete's case, and this is not just particular to MMA, but this is a sport that you and I are the closest to, and we probably know the most professionals in, that part of it in 2019 doesn't surprise me at all. If you'd have told me this 10 years ago, I might have been way more naive to it. And again, I'm not saying that pertains to BJ Penn in particular, and I'm not even saying, I don't mean to paint with such a broad brush that I'm saying, hey, whoever your favorite fighter is, chances are that's the case with them. I'm just saying there are a number of examples out there that are like that. Yeah. I mean, do you disagree?
No, I don't at all. I'm about 50-50. I think we all started as fans of the sport, and in meeting the fighters that I grew up loving, whether it was boxing or MMA or even athletes in other sports, it's about 50-50 where they live up to the person that I thought they were, and then some of them have just been, wow, I can't believe you're like this here and not like that in real life. So different. But you said 10, 15 years ago, you might have a different opinion. Let's go back 10, 15 years ago. We would always hear innocent until proven guilty. Nowadays, a headline pops up, and I don't know I don't think this is an MMA thing. I think this is just kind of across sports and even politics. But, man, that's really shifted, hasn't it, to just guilty until proven. Like, you really got to come out and prove to us that whoever wrote whatever they wrote, whether it was a very credible news source or Joe Blow's blog, you better come out and say, nuh-uh. That's strange to me.
Yeah, to a lot of people, that is probably the case. For me, innocent until proven guilty is still a fine standard. One of the things that matters to me about this story is that these are from court records. Yeah. So this is not, an unidentified source is telling me kind of thing, which that can still be legitimate too, but this is taken from court records. So there is an actual case pending here.
Yeah.
I think on a broader scale, and I'll just work this in quickly because, like you said, this is not by any means the only MMA fighter who is currently in the headlines for this kind of stuff. And in the last couple of years, we've seen a number of examples as well. I think everybody just needs to decide where their standard is. Is it innocent until proven guilty? For me, that's where it is. I'm fine with that. But it used to be, Dana White had the famous quote. I think it was around the time of the allegations against Travis Brown. Remember that a number of summers ago? Mm-hmm. He was going to fight on the July card. He got pulled off and all that.
I think that actually happened right around our junkie gathering. I think we were at that gym that day, right? Talking to him.
Yes. Now it's all, that's right. We went to Gorman. Yes, it's all coming back. Yeah, it was right around that time. So I believe it was right around then that Dana White had the quote that, listen, we've got to be safer than sorry until this whole thing gets investigated because you can't come back from putting your hands on a woman. That was more or less his quote, which I agree with. Now, since that, I think what has happened more is, sometimes people care about it. Sometimes they don't. It depends on who it is. The Greg Hardy case baffles me that they would want any part of that. But apparently, even though in that case a guy was convicted, his record gets expunged on appeal because the witness stops cooperating. So is that – see, I'm not okay with that technicality. Yeah. I don't like that. But – I am certainly okay with, hey, let's find out, let's give him his day in court. Now, I do think that because we cover a sport, and these guys fight in a sport that has that stigma, like you talked about, the one you constantly have to defend, I think there should be a higher standard. One of the things I like about training mixed martial arts is that I feel like there's a higher standard in gyms. You can't be, a bully in a reputable gym and generally be tolerated. You'll get straightened out real quick in a situation like that. I like that. I
don't think it lasts till the end of the week.
No, I like that about it, and I think there should be a higher standard where that's concerned. And consequently, there really isn't a fighter out there, no matter how much I enjoy watching them, no matter how accomplished they are, that for me, if they're guilty of something like this, like some kind of domestic abuse, I don't need them. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter to me. Well, what if we never get to see them fight? So we haven't seen them fight so-and-so yet. We haven't seen them go for their second championship. I don't care. Just be done with them. But I think we got to decide where that line is, where that standard is, because it does seem very fluid.
That's true. 877-FIGHT-93. That's 877-344-4893 if you want to chime in here. Just to let you know, on the XM side, we were preempted, but you can listen live on the Sirius side as well as on the app, so make sure you do that. Richard, I spoke to a friend. She's an attorney in town, and I asked her, because you're right, these are court records. Mm-hmm. And I asked her, just how easy is it to get a restraining order? Because I have a lot of friends that, well, it's kind of outing friends, but I know a lot of people who have either gotten these in their favor or against them, and sometimes it seems like just the smallest thing. Mm-hmm. And she told me that they used to be a lot tougher to get, but now because of social media, because how much private things are now in the public's eye, she said it's relatively easy to get from a judge. You obviously have to provide some evidence, but a judge is more inclined to just, they don't want to make a bad decision. So they find it easier to just say, I'm going to give you that restraining order. Yeah. And so I'm curious, like, in this situation, yesterday we talked about TJ Dillashaw, 2-year suspension, but no word from TJ. Mm-hmm. We've heard from just about everyone else but TJ.
Boy, have we.
And in this case, what's stopping a BJ Penn from just, even if it's the smallest of statement, just something.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that happens a lot in our sport?
Well, I'll tell you why I think it happens. Because if I think that if there's absolutely nothing to something, and I mean zero to something, right? This person is crazy. They are mentally unstable. They are making this up out of whole cloth. There's nothing to that. You come out and say that. You just come out and say it. Say zero to this. I will vehemently and vigorously defend myself. Mm-hmm. If you get into an area, which a lot of couples would, of, okay, it didn't happen like that. All right? That's not it. There something happened, but it wasn't that, and I can't get into too much right now because my attorney is saying don't talk. See, now it's getting murky, and I think you're going to do yourself more harm than good in that situation. That being said, I mean, fortunately, I've never been in a situation like that, but if I ever were, and if I were, it would be completely fabricated. I would be going to the mat defending myself. I mean, I would be screaming to the highest heavens.
I think I would too.
That I was maligned and that justice would be done, and that I would be upset with whoever was doing that to me, whoever was sullying my good name that way. But you brought up T.J. Dillashaw. That's not a domestic violence thing, but because of the EPO thing yesterday, we were talking about how his silence is speaking volumes, and the same situation. So I think that's a lot of times why it doesn't happen, because, well, I'm going to have to get into explaining that, gray incident that we got into, the argument that got a little out of hand, but it didn't rise to the level of what she's saying, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think they're going to enjoy trying to navigate that.
Well, I'll tell you what, we are going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll stay on this topic. 877-FIGHT-93. That's 877-FIGHT-93. If you want to chime in, talk to Richard and I. We can talk about this. We can talk about UFC 236 coming up. Holloway versus Poirier. How can that not be good? That's going to be great. You're listening to MMA Junkie Radio here on Sirius XM Fight Nation Channel 156.
Fight Nation. Take it away.
Just getting started. Future Hall of Famer Dwayne Wade is playing in his final regular season game as he leads the Miami Heat against the Brooklyn Nets on NBA radio, Sirius 207, XM 86, and streaming on the Sirius XM connected devices and speakers. I like that rejoin, Josh. You got a good rejoin voice.
That wasn't me, was it? Maybe it was.
Richard, you got a good voice too. How come you don't do voiceovers?
I would like to do voiceovers. I like to do voiceovers, and I like to do audiobooks. I'd like to get paid to read because I like to read.
I'll
read anything.
Books to people?
No, like audiobooks, like Audible.
Yeah, so like you're reading the book, what the author wrote to people, right?
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
I don't know if I could do that. If I could listen to you reading me a book, I'd laugh the whole time. That'd be fun, though. All right. This is a question that I think is going to come up. And I think you touched on it a little bit. You mentioned the name Tony Ferguson, Matt Hughes. There are a couple people. Now, granted, Matt Hughes went through something a little different before, but a lot of people are going to point to things like CTE.
Yeah.
Right? And you look at a guy like BJ Penn. And there was a fighter today. I think it was Tim Kennedy that he kind of pointed to that a little bit on Twitter. And they're going to say BJ Penn acted like this because he's taken a lot of abuse in fights. Now, not everybody in life that goes through things like this has had that happen to them. So you'd have to kind of lean on the guy's character before all this, right? And yeah, some people say some things, some rumors of the way he is or the way his family has acted in the past. But when you see news like this, Richard, how do you react to it? Is that something that pops into your head? It
could. I mean, that certainly could play a factor.
He's taking big shots, man.
Yeah, but that to me, at this point in time, is more a private issue for him and his family. I mean, there's no the judge. I mean, a judge may take that into account in terms of if he were to be found guilty and you're sentencing someone. You know, are they making a conscious decision to do this, or could they possibly have some brain trauma and things like that? Does that need to get? I mean, that's for that side of the equation. I mean, I guess from a fan's perspective, if I found out after the fact that he had been diagnosed with some CTE and that had played a role and all that, sure. I mean, that would matter to me in terms of, well, there could be medical explanation for why some of this may or may not have happened. But for the immediate future, I'm not really sure that it matters in terms of it's just either happening or it's not happening. And if it's happening, not only does it need to be stopped from happening, but he needs to be removed from the current position as a professional mixed martial artist that he's got.
Yeah, I mean, Tony Ferguson, right? It's a guy that I think the UFC did a good job with putting him on the shelf, have him figure things out. Which, by the way, he put out a tweet. Josh, do you remember exactly what that tweet said? But it kind of alluded to, I've passed all the testing I need to pass. I'm kind of ready to go, right?
Essentially, yes. Don't want to take anything out of context. So I'm looking for the exact tweet.
So I thought they handled that well, but this is definitely something that keeps coming up. And on this show, I've said this a ton. I really feel like the Fertitta brothers sold their shares of this business because they saw this coming. This and a few other things, unions, all that stuff coming.
When you say saw this coming, you mean CTE type stuff. Yeah, and this possibly being a byproduct of it.
Because they're around a lot of these fighters. Like, a lot of these fighters live in Las Vegas, or they frequent Las Vegas, and not all of them sound the same. Not all of them act the same, and you could kind of see it coming. And I thought they sold at the right time, because I think there's going to be more and more of this.
That could very well be. You know, the cliche defense for mixed martial arts violence compared to, say, professional boxing violence, and this is an argument I've made over the years, was always, okay, you know, in boxing, there's a standing 8 count. In boxing, you can get hit hundreds of times in the head and maybe never knocked out, but over 10 rounds, 12 rounds, take a lot of trauma. in MMA, yeah, sometimes the knockouts are more brutal in that somebody's knocked unconscious with a much lighter glove, but there is no standing 8 count. A lot of times it's one punch and you're done, so less of a cumulative effect. Sure. But now we would be remiss, I think, if we also didn't just acknowledge that, hey, maybe it's that the sport hadn't been around as long. And we're starting to see some examples of things that we have seen in sports like boxing.
Definitely. Let's take this call from Chris from Seattle. He wants to talk on this topic. What's up, Chris?
Hey, what's going on, guys? How you doing, Richard?
Hey.
My take is it's one thing when you got like a Ray Rice where it's on video and it's out there, and it's another when it's behind the scenes and it comes out. The way I like to see it, and I can speak personally because I was in a marriage and went through a year-long divorce and had some ugly stuff come out, and it all got squashed. So I like to see it play out, and who knows what happened, and let it all come out, through the court system and see the truth. I think people nowadays jump too soon on somebody and throw them under the bus and do certain things. But it's one thing, once again, when it's a Ray Rice situation and it's on video, the guy can't hide it. It is what it is. But something like this, you just don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think there's something to that. Just a discouraging thing for me, Chris, is that you have a fantastic main event in Max Holloway and Dustin Poirier this Saturday, and all that is getting buried by just the news of fighters testing positive, ripping off cell phones, which, by the way, have you seen that video now?
The new one that just came out, yeah.
A lot more clear. What's going on here that we're talking about with BJ Penn, the sport is being overshadowed by the bad part of life. And I think that part sucks, but yeah.
I hate to say it, man, but this might be the new norm. We've been watching the game for so long. We've been fortunate enough to come to these gatherings, truly meet these people before it's gone corporate, And we've been lucky enough to meet them one-on-one, shake hands, talk to them, and like you said, you pointed out, I think the Fertitta saw this coming. They got sold off, and it's totally blown up. And I hate to say it, this could be the new norm for some events going forward. And it does take away from the great fights and these great fighters, and it's unfortunate.
You know what, though? If this is actually true, to me, this is more important than Max Holloway and Dustin Poirier. This is more important. There's a family involved. There's people at risk. Dustin Poirier and Max Holloway are only at risk with each other, and they're both willingly getting in there. So that's to entertain us, and I understand that. But this is, if this are true, this is actually, I think, more important. And I'll just say this other thought, because I do agree with Chris that, I think everything should ultimately play out in court. But trained mixed martial artists, especially at this level, are not just anybody. They're people whose hands and fists and legs are more dangerous than the average person walking the street. So I am okay with, in the interim, until things do shake out in court, treating this the way you do a police officer and his gun when he's involved in a shooting.
Just take him off the shelf?
Yeah, if there needs to be an internal review to make sure everything's okay, yeah, sit them down, take them off the street, and they're at the desk for a little bit just because we're erring on the side of caution. And I think that's a fine principle to apply here to mixed martial arts.
All right, thank you very much for the call, Chris. You can follow Chris at 877-FIGHT93. We are going to take a quick commercial break, though, and when we come back, we're going to come back with the magnificent one, Stephen Marrocco. You can follow him at MMA Junkie Steven. We will be right back on MMA Junkie Radio, Sirius XM Fight Nation, Channel 156.
Now back to MMA Junkie Radio on Sirius XM Fight Nation 156.
Man, it feels good not to give Dracula diabetes anymore. Plus, you're pretty healthy, Richard.
Yeah, I like to think so. Just had a physical. Everything's looking pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I need to get in there. I haven't been in there in a while.
It's that vegan lifestyle, man.
Yeah?
Eat clean, you live clean.
How long do you think I could go being vegan?
I think you could go longer. It depends on if you hang out with me. I think you go a lot longer than you think you can, because I think there's a lot of stuff you don't think you can eat that you're going to enjoy eating.
Give me an example.
Barbecue.
Barbecue what?
Anything. Ribs, pulled pork, chicken,
pulled pork,
meatloaf, hamburgers. Yeah.
What's the substitute?
Vegan ways to do all of it.
I heard burgers are close.
It's a couple of things that get made together to make things like seitan or tempeh, which has a bunch of organic ingredients that go into it to make it. But that's how you get like bacon. That's how you get burger patties, ground beef, things like. I can take you to a place, Taco Terrian here in Las Vegas. It's going to blow your mind. When they see Frank walk in with me, the stock price shoots through the roof. They're like, we're about to run out of everything. And
I would do it.
Tears through it.
Oh, he eats it too?
Oh, yeah, he loves it.
I would do it, but I need to get you to do something that you wouldn't do. Mm-hmm. And there's certain things that are off limit for sure. Mm-hmm. But then there's just, I've never made you uncomfortable. I couldn't even think what.
Go bald.
Go bald?
Like just will it to happen?
No, like Richard, you got to stay bald as long as Go stays vegan.
Oh,
would
yeah.
You, if I stay vegan,
yeah,
what would you do that would be
something that would put me in an uncomfortable position? I mean, I could claim to believe in trickle-down economics.
Hey, would you not wear black if I go vegan?
That's a pretty good one. That's a pretty good one because I don't even know what I'd have to wear somebody else's wardrobe. Like everything I've got is black.
So if I go vegan, you will go anything other than black, and we'll just keep going.
I mean, I'm not kidding. I don't have clothes. Like, I mean, I'm going to have to come up with a contingency plan for.
Just wear the same outfit every day, like Peter Griffin.
Okay, but I got to go get a new outfit.
Well, it's just one. You can do that.
Like Peter Griffin.
What do you think?
That would be funny
if in my
like Peter
pantry
Griffin the whole time I was vegan.
I'd have to get vegan stuff as well.
Yeah, you would.
You know, Josh, you're a very lucky man. Because it's taking everything in my power not to say what we were talking about in the break, because that was a great idea.
We're not going to reveal
what you're talking
We're not going to reveal it. I just want to make sure when it is revealed, I get credit for it.
Oh my God!
Because I think I came up with a great hypothetical.
If the people involved do this, I'm going to be I'm going to be glued to their phone calls or their texts.
What about
Twitter,
their social media pictures of this?
Because somebody's got to. Oh my God!
Daily
so
Instagram story updates.
All right, I'll tease it. What we were talking about, it would involve. All right, let's see. Without giving too much away, another host on the channel and myself both doing something we're probably very uncomfortable with. I would probably last 2 weeks.
I'd stop right there. I wouldn't say any more.
That's it. That's all I got.
See, the other person is like Kenny from South Park. He'll literally do anything. I don't know.
And has done it.
Yeah, but I feel like Josh can get him on this one. Because I think Josh would just get to the point where you go, I don't give a shit. And you get in I don't give a shit mode. That's a dangerous Josh.
I have always believed that when you pitch hypotheticals to people, I've been through this in radio before. And it's always about the host. The hosts start trying to figure out what they would do. I always thought there was a lot of missed opportunity by not going to the producers, because those guys are hungrier. Mm-hmm. Those guys, like you said, they have the don't give a crap attitude.
Yeah.
And so,
They're dangerous,
my money, they are dangerous. For that reason, my money would always be on the producer.
Except for there's somebody new that started today that I heard her. I can't remember her name, but she sounded like she just went, hello. I mean, who was that person?
Our intern.
What's her name?
Victoria.
She's
done at 8 p.m. Eastern. She usually doesn't work this show. Yeah.
I don't know that she has the edge that Josh would have. Mm-hmm. Or even Andre, who sometimes can be more Dre than Andre. But I don't know. That'd be a great one. Anyway, look, we're going to get back on this. Steven Marrocco, we struck out with him, but we'll get him before the end of the show here. The rest of the show is pretty much open. If anybody wants to call in, 877-FIGHT-93. We're going to continue with this topic.
Can I just throw out something I was going to ask Stephen Marrocco?
Yeah.
That stuck out to me about this story, in amongst all the details and everything about BJ Penn, everything that we've kind of gone over. Did it surprise you that the UFC just said no comment?
It's something I wanted to ask him as well. Because it kind of goes back to, again, even if it's the most bland comment, it just kind of shows that we're aware of what's going on.
We take these type of allegations very seriously. Each instance is investigated thoroughly. There is ongoing ta-da-ta-da.
We ask that you bear with us.
Yes, exactly.
Something, right?
I mean, it shocked me so much not to see that in print. You know how, like, you read half a sentence and sometimes you kind of know what the next half is?
Yeah.
And it was like, you attempted to reach for comment. I was so expecting to see that, and then it was just no comment. Bam.
I think we hear it. We hear it enough in our industry that we kind of know what it means.
Yeah.
But I think anybody that reads something like that thinks they either don't care or they didn't know. Because and anyone else would have something.
Yeah. But I would also, and Stephen could clarify this, but I would think that when you contact them for comment, even if they were caught off guard or they were surprised and somebody had to say, hey, let us call you back in five minutes with a statement. Let me explain. Let me share this information with some people who need to know about it. I would imagine they'd be given that window. I don't know. That would have been another question I would have had for Stephen.
God, whoever has that job at the UFC, that's got to be terrible, right? You just answer at this point, you answer the phone going, what now? Right?
Yeah.
Then you got to walk over to Dana's office.
In fact,
knock on the door
that's
and
the number.
You'll never. He probably tells you, what now?
No, that's the number Stephen Marrocco calls. It's 1-800-WHAT NOW?
What now?
Operator standing by.
Wouldn't you be trembling walking to Dana's office at this point and going, So before you take a bite into that sandwich, I got something to tell you.
You open the door and he's like, "Why are you wearing baseball catcher gear?"
That's got to be a horrible job.
Yeah.
They sold it to you as it's just cushiony, it's comfy. You're just gonna sit back. You're basically gonna be on the internet. Every now and again, you'll hear something. You got to walk over and tell the boss.
You've got your own. You're gonna have your own hashtag. Hashtag what now? That's gonna be yours.
How many times do you use the excuse? I was in the bathroom. I didn't hear the ring. Yeah. Then you run out of that, right? So, you got to pick up the phone every time. Oh, it'd be a nightmare.
Pull the old my phone's cutting out.
So, okay, look. This is a BJ Penn problem right now. But some people would say it's also a UFC problem.
Well, I agree. I mean, just from a public standpoint, he's a UFC contracted fighter. He's got a fight coming up, and
Because now you got ESPN. They're a big deal in sports. And they just put all of their support behind you. And all they've really gotten back is just kind of negativity from our side. A couple good fights here and there, but really, because they got to report this stuff, right? You see it on the ticker at the bottom.
Well, all right, there's a couple of different ways to look at that. One,
to your Disney-owned company.
Yes. Well, I was going to say, to your point, a Disney-owned company, a publicly traded company, those things do not bode well for scandals because they affect stock prices, and especially when you can connect it to an organization like Disney, like what you just said. The flip side of that is that ESPN can say, well, we don't own the UFC. Just like we don't own the NFL. Yeah, we report on the NFL, but they're running a penitentiary over there. I mean, you can beat women and kill dogs as long as you don't sit down during the national anthem. We can't have that, but the other things we'll work with. And they've got to report that all the time. Now, if they've hired one of those guys as an analyst, now that person's working for ESPN. Now they have more of a direct problem, and that's when you see a lot of guys get fired or suspended or that kind of stuff. But there's always a little layer of protection when it's a third party. No, we don't own them. We just televise some of their stuff. That does give them a little bit of cover. And the UFC themselves, they are not a publicly traded company. There has been talk about them going public. If that ever happened, I think this would be a different scenario because, for one, you wouldn't just have a couple of people in positions to kind of make some unilateral decisions on things. You get a whole lot more people caring about their portfolios at that point. Yeah. But everything being what it is right now, I think those circumstances offer a little bit of cover that wouldn't be the case if these were direct employees of ESPN. But to your point, they certainly don't welcome it.
Now, there's no charges filed, but should all this be true, what does it do for BJ Penn? Because Conor McGregor could walk through this casino right now after everything he's been through. People are still going to hound him for a picture, an autograph. I think one time we talked about O.J. Simpson lives here in Las Vegas.
I've witnessed this.
He cannot go out without people putting their arms around him. Hey, it's the juice. What does it do for BJ Penn?
Same thing. Nothing.
Just
I mean,
goes
where
away?
that's concerned. I mean, if anybody's worried that BJ Penn won't have any fans anymore, he'll always. The O.J. example, extreme as it is a great one. I mean, I've witnessed that personally with him. And what happens is it's a complete polarization. Sure, I mean, half the people are visibly shaken that they're seeing him, but there's the goodly other half that run up to him for photos and want to buy drinks and hang out and all that kind of stuff. And such will be the case with if BJ Penn were convicted of this or anyone else for that matter.
You are the only guy that was on my side in an argument we had about a year ago. Steve Cofield jumped in on this as well. And what we were saying was, if you had to post a picture of you, I guess a selfie with either O.J. Simpson or Michael Vick, who would you post it with, right?
I'd post it with the one that was found innocent in a court of law, not the one that plea bargained and went to prison. So
I said Michael Vick I would not take a picture with. And everybody dropped, their jaws dropped, and they said, are you insane? And the way, and I'd like to get Josh's opinion on this, because I don't think Josh ever heard this. The way I looked at it was, O.J. Simpson did something terrible. Everybody in their life, I think, has had something bad happen to them, and then maybe punched a wall or did something that they're just not used to doing. But they say, I did it because this, and I couldn't control my emotions. Maybe they went to bed that night and said, I can't believe I did that. And hopefully you learn from it. Now, granted, he did something horrific. But I can kind of understand, okay, maybe something bad happened, and that's why he did it. I'm not saying it's right. It's obviously a horrible thing, but I can kind of see that. I thought Michael Vick did something horrible, then went to bed, and woke up the next day and did the same thing again.
Yes.
And just kept doing it. And to me, that
for
seems
7 years.
It seems like a different type of evil to me.
For 7 years.
And that's why I couldn't take that picture.
Let me clarify my position real quick from what I said. I mean, that would still be my position if you're telling me I have to pick one. I've interviewed O.J., but I mean, I've been physically with O.J. a couple of times.
Yeah?
Yeah. So I've interviewed him probably a total of 4 hours on radio. And this was right before he went to prison for the Vegas thing. So that we all that being said. But, I mean, I'm not a ready-made football fan, so I'm not taking pictures with either one of them from a fan's perspective. But if you're asking me in the hypothetical, you have to pick one. Which one? You get to turn down one, basically, I think is what your hypothetical is, right? That's Michael Vick all day for the exact same reasons. The same reason I just said that B.J. Penn deserves his day in court. I mean, if Michael Vick had been found innocent in a court of law and there was some gray area, well, you know, maybe the cops didn't handle the case right and things like that, I could probably use that rationale to sleep better. But there is, and you know, of course, full disclosure, I have one of the dogs that was rescued from Michael Vick. But there, a lot of people already know that. But there is no misunderstanding the serial killer tendencies of that guy and what he's got miswired in his head. Now, a lot of people will say that's the case with O.J. too, and certainly if O.J. did that, then yes, that is the case with him as well. But, you know, when he got busted in that hotel room here in Las Vegas a number of years ago, there were a group of people with O.J., right, that were backing him up, and there were a group of people that he'd gotten crossways with, and they were all in a scuffle together, right? I don't know, 6, 7 guys. All but one of them had a criminal record in that room. You know who the one that didn't have one was?
Who?
O.J. Simpson.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. I had no idea. Every once in a while you tell me these stories. By the way, people, if you don't know, back in the day, We're still MMA Junkie Radio, but Richard, you actually brought your dog in here.
Mel. He is featured in a documentary you can see on Netflix called The Champions about the dogs that were rescued from Michael Vick. And you can see George and Goes make a cameo because Mel was here in the studio with us.
The whole show, right?
That's right. While he was sitting right here in the corner while we were talking about the whole case. So that footage is actually in the documentary The Champions.
Well, I'll tell you what. We're still trying to locate Steve in Morocco, but we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to do the daily debate.
Okay.
It's MMA Junkie Radio here on SiriusXM Fight Nation, Channel 156. We will be right back.
Everybody knows it's duck season.
Rabbit season.
Duck season.
Rabbit season.
Whether it's food, less filling.
Tastes great.
Less filling.
Tastes great.
Gambling. Always bet on black.
I like red.
Black.
Red.
Black.
Red.
Black, dummy.
Or even social media.
Instagram.
Snapchat.
Instagram.
Snapchat.
The same applies to the biggest stories in MMA. Time for MMA Junkie Radio's Daily Debate.
Here we go. It's time for the daily debate. The question for today. There are two interim titles atop UFC 236 on Saturday, but which one? Which other fight are you most looking forward to? Here are your options. Roundtree and Anders, Grant and Joban, Krylov and St. Preux, or you can go other and give us another fight. Richard Hunter, what are you feeling today?
Well, unless I have time to pull up the whole card and make sure there's just not a sleeper somewhere on there.
I got a sleeper. You want me to go first?
Yeah, why don't you go first?
All right, here's my sleeper. I'm going to go other on this one.
Okay.
I'm going to go Curtis Millander and Bilal Muhammad. I think they've both had fights in the past that they've shown you that when they can be technical and poised, they can also let things get out of control. Mm-hmm. Okay? I think that fight is just going to be two proud men right in the middle. They'll probably have a strategy for about the first 20 seconds of that fight until they hit each other, and then it's going to be on, and it's going to be non-stop violence. I don't know if it'll go the distance, but I think it'll go a couple rounds at least. That's going to be my pick. I think that's going to be a fun one. Who do you got, Richard?
Boy, I'd like to get clever with this, be real alternative, but I'm going to take the feature bout, Eric Andrews and Khalil Roundtree, just because you've got a couple of guys, almost exact records, guys that as I go down that card and I think about where guys are kind of in their careers right now, you know, what's on the line, who moves up, who moves down, based on the outcome of the fight. Plus, if I pair up any two names, if I'm not looking at those title fights, any two names, and I go, okay, I can immediately bring to mind the most combined highlight moments that I've seen. I think it's those two guys.
I'm going to tell you why you're wrong.
Okay.
All right. Now, you can't really be wrong because this is what the fight you're most looking forward to. But I agree. I think that is going to be a barn burner, a hootenanny possibly.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's going to be fast. I think it's going to be under a minute.
Okay.
One of those two guys is going to sleep.
That doesn't qualify?
20 seconds?
Well,
yeah, I mean, it's fun.
20 seconds of fury? I mean, you're saying you...
I'm trying to give you 10 minutes of fury because I think this will go maybe 2 rounds.
All right.
Right? That's why I was going to do what you did.
Is this what it says on your Tinder app?
Yes. 10 minutes of fury is my name. 20 seconds of fury.
Damn!
You know what's scary is Tinder is the one... Well, all right, we'll get into that later. Let me tell you what Junkie Nation had to say. 44% agreed with Richard Hunter. Anders and Roundtree. 12% went Grant and Joban. 36% went to Krylov and St. Preux, and 8% went to other. Now that other could be any other matchup, but they agreed with you. So technically you win. Touch of gloves. You got it. That's today's daily debate. I want to finish up what we were talking about before we went to break there. The hypothetical that we brought up on the show about a year, maybe 2 years ago. And it ended up... Steve Cofield ended up talking about it. He was here in studio, and then he went on his show here in Vegas, and that turned into a big thing. Josh, we kind of posed it to you. Do you have an answer? It's a nightmare.
I mean, is there an abstain option? Is there, I mean,
apparently not.
Any other gun to the head we're talking?
Gun to the head. You got to post one of them.
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, Michael, of the two of them, Michael Vick is the only one who used a gun to the head. So, do with that what you will.
Guys, I mean, this is not a picture I would be eager to take. It's not a picture I would be eager to post. And it's not one I would even... I mean, this is not an... I would have to take the picture with Michael Vick. I mean, it just comes down... to an animal, many, Jesus.
Yeah,
I'm not tongue-tied very often here. And, like, you know, in break, I'm watching this video of Richard, you confronting Michael Vick and doing a great friggin' job, I might add. But ultimately, it's people versus it's people. And, you know, that's what it comes down to. And, Vick did his time. He did do his time. You got to... You know, you got to acknowledge that, but it is not a picture I would be eager to post. You got me all fucked up here, Ghost.
Well, wait a second.
I'll tell you what. Look, we're getting close to the top of the hour here.
Thank God.
And every time Richard comes on here, I learn stuff about him, and he so casually says it that it kind of gets on my nerves.
Richard adopted one of the dogs. I'm saying this. I don't even like that I'm saying it.
A lot of people don't know that. So I think we need to kind of give people a little background on that. And then what bomb did you drop the other day too? Oh, I don't know if we could say that one. But
which one?
The one involving the basketball player. Have we said that on the show before?
You talking about Lamar Odom?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we talked all about that on the show.
Well, we given the background behind that?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's all. I can talk about that.
Oh. Well, yeah. There's a lot to Richard Hunter that you guys don't know. And so he has kind of a background in what happened in that incident with Michael Vick. And like we said, Mel's been in studio, and I kind of wanted to touch a little bit on the way he acted that day, because that, I think, is maybe why it really got me going that day when we were talking about that. But I'll tell you what, we're at the top of the hour. We're going to take this quick commercial break. We will come back. This is MMA Junkie Radio with Richard Hunter and Goes, Sirius XM, Fight Nation 156. We'll be back.
We are the nation of domination.
All right, we are back. MMA Junkie Radio. I'm Goes. That's Richard Hunter. Gorgeous George is off. Dan Tom comes back Friday. The gang will all be reunited on Friday, but George comes back tomorrow. But for now, what we want to do, the story of the day that we've been focusing on, BJ Penn issued a restraining order. Mother of children alleges years of physical sexual abuse. Steven Marrocco, the magnificent Marrocco from MMA Junkie, is on the line, and he's here to shed a little bit more light on this whole incident. What's up, Steven?
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Not too bad, man. I mean, it is kind of weird doing this show, and every day, I was mentioning to Richard earlier, we got a big card coming up, UFC 236, and it's been overshadowed by all these stories coming out, man. I mean, what is going on? A lot of legends in the sport. BJ Penn is a legend, and now this story comes out here. I want you to start from the beginning. How did you come about this? Because I feel like you caught everybody off guard with this one.
Well, I mean, the long and the short of it is I get tips, and, based on the type of stories that I do, people tell me things from time to time, and I look into them. And a lot of them turn out to be nothing, and other ones turn out to be something. And, the way I typically work is if I can find some actual paperwork on it, some documentation, that's when the whole process starts. So it actually wasn't that easy to find the documents because the way that the search system works in the Hawaii courts, the online system, it wasn't immediately evident that this was in the docket, so to speak. But I actually had to, mail a check and mail for these documents. It took a couple weeks to actually get a hold of them. So it wasn't as easy as just looking online and saying, "Oh, now I could see something was there," but I had to actually physically send for the documents from the courts to get all the information that I reported today.
So there are times where things like these go down, and they completely blindside us. And then there's times where you kind of hear rumors about certain fighters, certain camps, and you hear the news and you go, okay, that kind of makes sense. When word got to you about this, was it something that completely shocked you? Because even in the show before us, like, RJ Clifford, or I'm sorry, Jimmy Smith and Ryan McKinnell were talking about this, and they were talking about things that you've heard of BJ Penn throughout the years. Where were you on this? Is this something that completely blindsided you?
Well, 2 years ago, actually 3 years ago now, I did a story based on some allegations that were made by the girlfriend of Pedro Carrasco. So this is obviously a different situation, but when it comes to specific allegations like this, I mean, no, I didn't hear anything about this specifically. But of course, I immediately thought to the reporting I did in 2016, which talked about that allegation. That was a whole ordeal in and of itself. I don't know if you remember, some of the back and forth that went on in the media and with other reporters and BJ. It was a real mess. I heard a lot of stuff around that time frame about BJ and his character and everything like that. A lot of it, I'd say the majority of it, I couldn't report. There were people that I talked to that just didn't want to go on the record with what they were saying. But BJ has had a lot of run-ins with the law over the last couple of years. I mean, and that you can see that if you look at the docket. And I actually got something else, just happenstance as a result of sending out these documents, a sort of random thing that I picked up that I'm looking into right now, where he was, there was basically an APB out on him for giving terroristic threats to this guy who owned a taro farm, and he allegedly, I guess, threatened him with a machete.
A what farm?
So, what's that?
I'm sorry,
what kind of farm?
A what farm?
A taro farm. Taro is a foodstuff.
Oh.
In Hawaii.
Oh. Wow.
So I'm looking into that one now. I'm also looking into getting some documents that may have been attached to the docket that I received the paperwork from. Apparently, there's some additional documentation that I actually have to submit to a judge to get a hold of. So, stay tuned. I might have some more stuff coming up.
Wow, I mean, this whole thing, it caught us by surprise in the morning, and one of the things that we kind of appreciate the fact that you came on here and you're explaining your process, because one thing that caught us by surprise was the UFC hadn't given you any comment on that, and then the attorney involved seemed like the way he had said he said it was incomplete information, and he seemed surprised that you were able to get this information. All that seems so strange to me. Can you explain why the attorney would find that surprising? Because it's public records, correct? Yeah,
I don't really know. I don't know what's going on in his mind. It was a very awkward conversation. I mean, on a couple different occasions, I tried to stress that I really want to get BJ's side of the story on this. These are some pretty serious allegations. Obviously he hasn't been convicted of a crime. That's important to highlight in bold here. BJ was never convicted of a crime. He wasn't arrested in connection with any in connection with any of these allegations. So that's important to highlight. But nonetheless, this is a public records request. There's some pretty unflattering information, some pretty inflammatory accusations, and I wanted to get that. I wanted to get his side of the story. That side of the story may be contained in these documents that I can't get unless I get a judge to sign off on it. That could be the case. But as far as the legal, him being prevented by law from commenting on the case, I'm obviously not an attorney, but I don't know if that flies. I think he might have just been trying to get me not to report it. Gotcha. Now, as far as the UFC is concerned, to this point, is there still no comment on their side? And what does that mean to you when an organization as big as the UFC, don't they have at least a blanket statement or something? Well, I was talking to Simon about this online earlier today, and actually I was talking to Matt, and we were talking about how things have seemed to have changed over the last 4 to 5 years. It seemed like 4 or 5 years ago they were kind of headed in the right direction with a lot of this stuff. It seemed like there was less tolerance for misbehavior in many forms outside the cage. There was obviously some times that I think they overcorrected a little bit. I think everyone would agree with that. With Miguel Torres and stuff like that. But I think they were headed in the right direction as far as responsibility as a large sporting organization, taking responsibility for these things, recognizing that the behavior of individuals reflects on the entire organization, and reacting accordingly. And it just seems like as of late, there's a lot less. I don't know if it's care, but it's like it just doesn't seem like it's as high of a priority right now. Or if it is a priority, they sort of try to address it through the channels that they have relationships with, like ESPN or reporters that they have, that have historically been favorable to them in coverage. So, I tried. I left them. I gave them at least. I didn't give them the 24 hours. I gave them overnight from last night, and checked in this morning, and they basically just said, no comment. I couldn't. They weren't able to get. They weren't able to pass it down the chain far fast enough. So I think it's unfortunate because it reflects on them as an organization. It's the same thing. I would say with the whole story with Rachel Ostovich and Greg Hardy. Regardless of how the individual players, the optics of it are important. They're important to address. And now that they're under this big corporate umbrella, it's even more important in my opinion. But I am not their PR staff. I'm just a reporter trying to basically do my job, trying to get every side of the story. BJ is an active fighter. He's going to fight next month. That's the reason why, that's one of the reasons why we put this out, because he's an active fighter, because he's a UFC Hall of Famer, and I think it would be, responsible for the UFC to, at least weigh in and at least say, hey, we're concerned, but that's just me.
MMAjunkie.com reporter Steven Marrocco joins us on the program. You can follow him at MMAjunkie Steven. Richard Hunter from Phone Booth Fighting. What do you have for us, Steven?
Steven, you just referenced that chain of command that the UFC needed to go through to get an official statement. And that kind of ties into something Goes and I were talking about in an earlier segment today. You touched on this too, that even going back a few years, like the Travis Brown incident, for example, where he had a fight scrapped on a big card until an investigation could be done into some allegations like this, and then they ultimately cleared it. Obviously, they were erring on the side of caution in that scenario. In a way that maybe doesn't happen so often these days. What about that chain of command, if anything to your knowledge, has changed? Because you go back a few years, and those were the days where you got the feeling that in a situation like that, you're basically going to Dana White, he's maybe talking to Lorenzo, and they're making a decision, with just a few people. Is there anything about the structure of the new ownership that has changed where now there's more people involved in a situation like that, and maybe that's why the reaction has gotten a little watered down? Can you speak on that at all?
My personal experience is that there are more PR people than there used to be, and your results vary widely depending on who you go to. I don't have the access to Dana White that John Morgan does, for instance, or even, different. Basically, what I'm trying to say is different reporters on our staff have different levels of access with different people. It's a very segmented kind of situation where certain people have better access with others than I do. So I go through a couple different people, and I try to work through them, because I've experienced in the past that if you just sort of shotgun through everyone, you end up pissing everyone off. And so it kind of varies, my approach, depending on the seriousness of the story I'm working on. But my sense of things from this situation is that, it feels like it's got to go through a committee before it gets approved. Maybe that's new, or maybe it's not. But that's the impression that I've gotten, and I think that's unfortunately to their detriment in situations like this, because even if you just said, like, look, we're very concerned and we're looking into this, like, okay, like I understand that. And maybe that will change. Maybe this story will actually prompt them to come forward and address this. I've experienced it many times that stories that I've done have prompted them to come out and make an official statement and take some official action of some sort. But, time will tell.
Steven, do you anticipate this fight still happening, even with all this coming out? I mean, it's got to be a distraction for a BJ Penn that desperately needs a win.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, it's my understanding that there's a custody battle going on right now, and that could be a part of all of this. Like what we're seeing right now could play into that situation in BJ's life. As to whether he's able to, bear down and get through it, I really don't know. I mean, there were a lot of people, I think, that were kind of against him fighting in the first place. I mean, if you look at the reaction that was out there when they announced this fight, it wasn't overwhelmingly positive. But at the end of the day, it's only the promoter to stop him from fighting. If he wants to fight, if he's signed to fight, and he's going to go forward with it, then it's on him, and then ultimately it's on the UFC whether or not to let him fight.
One thing that has been pointed out by fans and even a couple fighters, whenever something like this happens, when somebody acts out of character, because I think the general public knows BJ Penn as that fun-loving guy from Hawaii that comes out and gives us a hell of a fight every single time. But the one thing that people have been kind of pointing to is what's been going on with CTE, and is this a reaction from that? You've been covering the sport a long time, and a lot of this has been talked about. What's your take on that? Do you feel like that is something that's relatable to the story?
Well, I think it's unfortunate when people just immediately chalk up stories of misbehavior or allegations like this to brain damage. We don't know what exactly happened between these two people. We're looking at one side of this situation, one representation of a relationship that stretches over 10 years. Mm-hmm. We really don't know the full story. So to just chalk it up to, oh, it's brain damage, that's a pretty big leap to make, in my opinion. I think we need to see how, and also it's important to say we may never know how this plays out, depending on how public this resolution is or isn't. This could be just sort of a blip in the radar, a concerning blip in the radar, and maybe we hear about it later from BJ when he decides to open up about it. But I think that we need to. I think that people in general need to wait before they just sort of make that blanket statement that it's brain damage, because there's so much we don't know about BJ's life and his medical state or his state of health, and to make that judgment without knowing those things, I think is a bit irresponsible.
Steven, do you feel like this new era, this ESPN era, will some heat start to trickle down from ESPN, because the last couple stories just have not looked very good for our sport? Do you feel like they're going to start to get to a point where maybe they're going to start putting pressure on the UFC?
I also don't know the answer to that question. I mean, with the whole Rachel Ostovich thing, we tried to get, both me and AJ Perez tried to get some stuff from ESPN, and he actually has way more reach on the Disney ESPN side than I do. And both of us couldn't get anything, or at least anything on the record. So I know they're aware of it. I mean, it's impossible that they're not. Mm-hmm. But I hope that they're watching this stuff. I hope that they're paying attention, and then I hope that they, eventually step forward to do the right thing, whatever that might be. Whether it's some sort of statement that acknowledges things, or a new program that addresses these kinds of things, or some sort of enforcement of the code of conduct. whatever it means to them, I hope that they have a good influence on the UFC as the corporate parent, as opposed to a hands-off, do whatever you want kind of a relationship.
Yeah. All right. Well, Steven, I know you're a busy guy. We want to thank you for the time that you did give us today. I'm sure keep it dialed into MMA Junkie. You got some more stuff brewing here. And when do you anticipate all that stuff coming out, by the way?
As soon as the clerks get the photocopies to me.
Wow, this is a crazy sport, man. All right, Steven, thanks for the time, buddy. We really appreciate it. You can follow Steven Marrocco at MMA Junkie Steven. Great reporter for our website, MMAjunkie.com. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll react to some of the things that Steven said. Brought up some good points, Richard, that I want to dive into. We'll be right back. This is MMA Junkie Radio on SiriusXM Fight Nation Channel 156.
Into getting some documents that may have been attached to the docket that I received the paperwork from. Apparently, there's some additional documentation that I actually have to submit to a judge to get a hold of. So, stay tuned. I might have some more stuff coming out.
What a dark time in mixed martial arts. I'm Goes, that's Richard Hunter. And the voice you hear in our heads, that's Josh. He's our producer. So Steven Marrocco just came on, reporter for MMAjunkie.com. And as if this situation isn't bad enough for BJ Penn, there could be more things on the horizon. It's hard for me to say because I'm nobody, but I don't see this fight going down.
You're not nobody, Goes.
Thank you.
To me, you're not.
Thank you, Richard. You think he'll fight?
I'll tell you this. I would say the chances of him not fighting are greater than most if other people were put in this kind of situation. I think it's an easier cancellation for the UFC, just because, as Steven brought up, there was kind of a weird reaction to him fighting anyway.
Yeah.
It's not any, it doesn't have title implications or any kind of thing like that at that point. I mean, I'm not trying to be callous about it. I'm just trying to be pragmatic and say, well, what's really on the line here? I think that's kind of an easier cancellation, and he may cancel it on his own. I mean, and not that this is necessarily related.
Blame him.
No, and not that this is necessarily related in any way, but I can tell you in the past, from dealing with like setting up interviews and stuff like that with BJ, stuff can get shut down on pretty quick notice, kind of for no reason. Not saying that has anything to do with this situation, but it's not like, I think he himself in particular might be more inclined to shut it down if it's really as dire as it seems.
I mean, Steven had mentioned too the custody thing on top of this, on top of something that we don't even know yet. That's a lot of stress for just Joe Blow that's clocking in 9 to 5. Let alone a guy that's about to go into the cage and fight another man.
The only thing about that is the weird sort of bizarro world thing about that when it comes to fighters is there's some fighters that would tell you that, yeah, that's all the more reason they got to get in there. They're actually going to get in the cage to escape everything you just talked about.
I never thought of it that way. Yeah. That's true. We've had fighters come on the show before and say they're not even looking at their opponent's face. They're actually seeing something else, whether it's their father that abused them or a teacher that mouthed off or whatever. Sometimes they don't even see their opponent's face.
Frank's told me that he can hear conversations in the crowd.
Really?
That to me is unfathomable. If somebody was trying to beat me unconscious, I can't imagine hearing two guys talk about where they're going after the fight, but he said he can hear very specific things like that.
Did you, your time in the cage, did you hear anything?
Well,
what did you hear?
Let's just say that the length of that fight wasn't real conducive to a lengthy conversation
I know,
between
but did you
any
hear,
two people.
Did they even catch you by surprise from the crowd? From the crowd. I don't know why he does this. So he puts me in the situation where he almost wants me to joke about it to see if I'm going to do it, and I won't bite on it. But you know what I mean. A cell phone ring, something.
No, I mean I heard my corner. I heard Frank. I heard kind of oohs and ahs from the crowd. You know. Yeah, I mean I heard. Yeah, I'll say this: my senses were heightened for sure. Not just like touch, but sight, sound, all that. Definitely heightened. Everything you're zoned in on. And then my real memory that I took from it was when I went down. I never went out, so when I went down, I thought to myself in my head, I got to get up quick because he's coming, right? And as I'm looking down, I see shoes. And I remember thinking in my head, oh, this is a bad sign. Because the guy I'm fighting is barefoot. Yeah. The referee's wearing the shoes. And his shoes were right underneath my head.
To be fair, it's an amateur fight, so the referee's going to take even more caution than they would in a professional fight.
Yeah.
So you may have been able to get back up and continue.
That was pointed out by everyone. Yeah, for sure I could have. Yeah, but that was pointed out that, hey, we're not trying to have any visits to the emergency room here. You know, we're erring on the side of caution. And not only is it an amateur fight, but, I mean, I'm old. There's a lot of things to consider there. I will tell you just very quickly one thing that for sure will make you laugh. So, and I still have to sort this out with.
Did you grab the ref's leg?
No, that would have been great. I wish I would have had the wherewithal to do that and to just act like, what? Yeah, I didn't. But I still have to sort this out with Jessica Rose Clark because she was our head coach, but she was also the matchmaker, right? So so fight's over, fight gets stopped. I'm walking back to the little dressing room area we have, whatever, and Frank's there. And he's giving me the question, you know where you are and all that kind of stuff. He's like, oh, it's good. Because Jennifer comes running in, my girlfriend, and she's like, and he was sitting with Frank's wife, Jennifer. And Frank's wife has an entirely different perspective on this kind of thing. You know, she's like, oh, yeah, just go check on him. He'll be fine. That's not the worst I've seen, you know. And, of course, my girlfriend's like, oh, no, I hope he remembers me kind of thing. So she goes, just go to him. Just go to him, right? So she's come in the dressing room, and Frank's like, don't worry. I've asked him if he knows where he is and everything. I think we're all good. He's pulling the tape off my gloves. And he says to me, no, that's crazy. You know, in 2 seasons of Wimp to Warrior, that's their fastest knockout. And I said, how do you know that? And he goes, Jessica Rose Clark just told me. I said, just now? And he said, yeah. I said, so she thought that on our way back to the dressing room, that was the time to impart this dubious information to you. He goes, oh, yeah.
Did she jog to catch you and say, by the way?
Here's what I'm going to pitch to her, because you love the hypothetical. I'm going to suggest to her that, because now with ESPN, you know, they're looking for all kinds of like new segments and viral content and everything they can do. I'd love to see a series with her where she is the bearer of bad news. So, you know, like you see these rewind things, the behind the scenes with the fights. I'd like to see a deal with her where they've got her standing by like Laura Sanko style, and then whenever somebody's walking back in defeat to the dressing room, she catches up with them on the live mic, and she's like, do you realize that's the first time that somebody has lost 3 straight 10-8 rounds or whatever it is? And just give them
to the
news.
Point where now when you see her coming, you're like, shit.
What
happened?
It's like when VH1's Behind the Music calls your band. It's not for a good reason.
Oh, man.
You tune into that, right?
Hell yeah, I would tune into that.
Series.
And you know what? I'm probably sounding like a hypocrite because I'm one of the guys that hates. I love the footage that they show, but I also hate it just because I feel like he just lost in front of millions of people. Give him 10 minutes. Just give him 10 minutes to go back and do whatever the hell he needs to do. And then I think it was Jose Aldo, right, that was crying kind of in a corner.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I was like, I think one time Melvin Gillard was throwing a chair. And can you imagine your worst moment, whatever the hell it is, okay, in front of so many people? And you don't even have, like, at home, at least you run in the bathroom, close the door, and scream or whatever. You don't even have that. Yeah. That's crazy, man. But people love it. 877-FIGHT-93. That's a great idea. And I think she'd be good at it. 877-344-4893 if you want to chime in on that big story. Something that our man Steven Marrocco said. And I'm going to tease this now. I thought he made a good point about people rushing to jump on the CTE bandwagon when something like that does go down. We talked a little bit about it in our intro. It's true, and I can understand that particular statement. I want to say came from Tim Kennedy. I'm going to check it out. He's somebody that's been championing against these type of things, right? He's trying to protect the fighters. Yeah, they started one of, I believe it's 3 movements to have an association. But yeah, maybe people are jumping a little bit too quick to that because that happens outside of mixed martial arts. But I'll tell you what, we'll talk a little bit about that, and we'll talk a little bit about Brock Lesnar when we come back here on MMA Junkie Radio, Sirius XM, Fight Nation, Channel 156.
A new brand of sports.
Still instinctively fighting his way up, still suffering the effects of the low blow, and 2 stops.
A third, a trifecta of stops. Cover by Rollins, hook of the leg. Seth Rollins is the Universal Champion.
Now, back to more MMA Junkie Radio with Goat and Richard Hunter on SiriusXM Fight Nation, Channel 156.
He's getting better at it. Spring is in the air, and so is football. The SiriusXM Spring Camp Tour is back and taking you around the country inside the top football programs. Right now, Michael Griffin and Ari Temkin are in Austin to talk to the top coaches and players on the Texas Longhorns on ESPNU Radio SiriusXM 84. The Texas Longhorns. Thorn in my side. I'll never forget that Rose Bowl. God, that hurt. Richard Hunter, Josh, and I had a conversation off the air about Brock Lesnar. And we were going to bring up one thing, and then we tied it into like 3 other things. And I thought it was pretty interesting, and I want to bring that up now on the air. I asked you this question, Richard. Do you think that Brock Lesnar coming back to the UFC is kind of going to hurt Conor McGregor on his side? Because Conor McGregor, arguably, I mean, look at the stats. He has some of the biggest pay-per-views the UFC has ever seen.
Yes.
So if he says, I'm going to retire, which is basically I'm going to retire unless you give me what I want, without Brock, the UFC is going to say, well, this is going to hurt. We need to figure out how we can supplement that income that came via Conor McGregor. Here's a big tool, Brock Lesnar, who also is very big in pay-per-view. Now what, Connor? Is the way I look at it. Is a little, if you're familiar with Texas Hold'em, kind of all in, right? You feel differently.
I do, in the sense that, yes, and with your scenario, that could hurt Conor's bargaining power with the UFC, but I think the trade-off is it improves his bargaining power with WWE if he wants to go there. Because the whole hook of having Brock Lesnar in the WWE is that he is this legit UFC badass. I would argue that you actually upgrade in terms of Conor McGregor coming at the time that Conor McGregor is coming into the WWE for the people who are in the know. Now, you don't upgrade in terms of wrestling persona. Obviously, Brock Lesnar is a mountain of a man. Conor McGregor is a smaller person. But mic skills, promotion skills. Brock Lesnar, they don't even have a microphone in the WWE. They has a Paul Heyman that talks for him.
Yeah.
Conor McGregor won't need that.
Oh,
Conor McGregor will be a one-man show if you were to bring him over there. So I think in a lot of ways that's not only a benefit. And the other thing is, too, you're talking about a guy in Brock Lesnar who he works a limited enough schedule in the WWE, but if he's coming back to the UFC for what, 1 fight? I don't know, maybe 2 if somehow he beats DC and that goes his way, which I don't think happens.
I'm hearing more and more people side with you that that's not even close.
I think it's a blowout. I think DC absolutely steamrolls him. I said on the show yesterday, but not to the point that it won't sell. It'll sell gangbusters. So I totally get the business of doing it. Now, my argument yesterday was that Daniel Cormier would then retire from mixed martial arts competition and maybe go over to the WWE. I mean, he'd be a solid hand over there, too. But I think that in terms of benefiting Conor, that would actually could at worst be a wash, but possibly even be a greater benefit to him in terms of bargaining power with the WWE. Now, I do want to say this very quickly. With the allegations that are currently around Conor McGregor, which are very serious allegations of sexual assault, one thing the WWE is that the UFC is not, which we covered earlier in the show, is they are a publicly traded company, and they would be the direct. I mean, they're independent contractors, but they would be perceived as the direct employers of somebody like Conor McGregor. They do not have that extra layer of third-party protection like ESPN has with UFC to tell Disney, hey, we don't own the UFC, we just cover it, like we were talking about in the previous segment. In this situation, the WWE would have to take, I think, a lot more direct ownership of employing somebody like Conor McGregor or contracting with them, if you will, and I think they got a lot more to consider when it comes to things like that than the UFC does. Because it maybe, if nothing else, just the fact that there's so many kids involved in the audience.
That's a good point. You know, there's so much going on in that world of pro wrestling, MMA, crossing over back and forth. Tomorrow we will have Dave LaGreca on the show, and he can clear some of that up because we're kind of I mean, I watched WWE growing up my entire life, and then I kind of got away from it. Then I came back, and now I think I've been away from it for a while and back a little bit. But I still don't get a lot of things that go on there and how it works. So we will speak to him tomorrow. I want to ask you, though, do you think Conor McGregor, because he makes a lot of money in combat sports, and yeah, he's got to put together a camp, because that's the one thing I will give him credit, is he shows up for every fight. If it doesn't go his way, I don't think you ever go, oh, he didn't train. He seems prepared in just about every fight. It may not go his way, but I think he gives you an honest camp. For WWE, I don't know what kind of money they shell out, but is it going to be equal to that? And is he going to do more work over the year? Like, do you think that'll work out over there for him?
Yeah, I mean they've got deep pockets now. They also are flexible to schedules. I mean, they have been in the past, you know, especially if you hold all the cards. If he comes in and goes, okay, like this was, I know for a fact this was Brock's deal at one point, where he agreed to a certain number of dates. Because a lot of those wrestlers, in addition to the monthly pay-per-views they do and the weekly television shows, they're doing what they call house shows, which are untelevised shows, but they're contractually obligated to go around to all these. Brock Lesnar wasn't doing any of that. Yeah. He had, okay, you've got a certain number of dates you can use me for under this contract. You pick them. And
those are going to be your Raws, your SmackDowns, and your pay-per-views, right?
Be whatever you can put me on a house show if you want to, but choose wisely, because you only have this certain select number, and once you're done, you're either paying me more or you've used them all up. So they would only put him on big shows, to your point, the televised ones and the pay-per-views. I think Conor McGregor could easily engineer a similar deal to that, and given the fact that, you know, to get back to his ability to talk, I think Conor McGregor could be proportionately paid more for his mouth than he ever has before compared to his physicality. I mean, yes, that's what sells the pay-per-views up to this point, but I could see scenarios where now the WWE is driving ratings just off having him on television talking.
All right. But Ronda Rousey, I believe I asked this question to... This is the answer I got to whoever I asked. It was on the air. I thought the same thing, that Ronda wouldn't be doing like house shows and stuff like that, but I guess because she still needs to hone in her skills a little bit, those were actually useful, and she would do them from time to time. You think that if Conor went, he wouldn't do any of those type? He'd have more of a Brock-esque type? I
think it would depend on what kind of deal they made with him. Now, keep in mind, Ronda Rousey is a lifelong pro wrestling fan. I don't know if Conor McGregor falls into that category or not. And in Brock's case, he broke in through pro wrestling. He went pro wrestling to UFC, not the other route originally. So, I mean, maybe if Conor's super excited to be in pro wrestling, but I've never heard him express anything even along the lines of like Daniel Cormier, who we know is a huge WWE fan. So I would assume Conor McGregor is attracted to the business model, you know, that he sees a lot of money to be made there, and that looks good to him. Yeah. So I would think that would have to be worked out with him. But I know in Ronda's case, you know, 1 year ago she wrestled at WrestleMania in like a tag team kind of scenario where they could kind of cover up her green the green aspect of her skill set, pro wrestling skill set, and they gave her an entire year to mature to where we got last Sunday, which was headlining WrestleMania and pulling it off. I mean, she, you know, that was a solid match she had by pro wrestling standards. So that's a good example of, you know, what's possible with that. But I think also you have to have somebody who's got an athletic work ethic that translates to pro wrestling and the want to excel on that level in pro wrestling, like Ronda obviously has wanted to do. I have no idea about that with Conor.
The things that have been happening with Conor, would WWE stand for that?
No.
One after
I don't
another?
think they can.
No?
No.
It would hurt them too much, right?
Yeah, because like I said, you've got the kid factor involved. There's like, you would have here's what would happen. You would have people weighing in on that would never in a million years weigh in on the fact that UFC keeps BJ Penn on a card. There is not some suburban flyover state soccer mom that is going to think twice about BJ Penn staying on that card. But if she finds out that the show that her kids sit down to watch every Monday night or whatever, or they want to go down to the local Normo Dome and see the next, live Raw taping or whatever, that they've got a guy on the card who is in deep into some sexual abuse allegation. I think there's way more blowback where that's concerned.
I'll tell you what, we have a caller on hold. Marco from Waco, let's take your call. How you doing, Marco?
Marco from Waco, ¿qué pasa, dudes?
What's up, man?
Hola.
So I sort of turning to MMAjunkie Radio, but this is busted open. Right,
There's a lot of that lately, huh?
Hey, Bully Ray just walked in.
So, look, Brock is going to come to the UFC. The only reason he's coming is because they're paying him a buttload of money for it, Now, how will he affect this new era of the ESPN Plus? I don't know, and I don't think the UFC really cares, because remember, they're getting guaranteed for each pay-per-view the equivalency of 500,000 pay-per-view buys. That is $30 million per pay-per-view.
That's a very good point.
$360 million a year. So the UFC, they don't really care because they got so much guaranteed money coming in right now that whatever goes over 500,000 pay-per-views is icing on the cake, because they split that revenue with ESPN. So, I think ESPN is more vested than the UFC is in promoting Brock coming in. They're going to pay him anyway. They're going to guarantee him a paycheck that is probably equivalent to a one-year deal with the WWE, because Brock is a good businessman. And when it comes to Conor, sorry.
Well, I was going to say, I think you're right in that regards, but the one thing about the UFC, I don't know, Richard, have you ever heard them say, I think we're good?
No, I mean, they will still care. I wouldn't go that far. They definitely still care. But to Marco's point, and I agree with him on this, they are starting out with, they're kind of hitting from the red tees now, to use a golf analogy, on all these pay-per-views. Like, they're still going to have to play the hole, but they've got a cushion that they're starting with, which is that guaranteed money, and it's a lot of guaranteed money. It's a lot of guaranteed, buy equivalents, basically, that Marco points out. I think it's a great point. I think that it puts them in a position to be able to absorb some fiscal damage, if you will, now in negotiations that they wouldn't feel so comfortable with absorbing before the ESPN deal.
Dude, it's crazy that I can't even believe we're in this situation, because I get it. Brock Lesnar, big draw. Does he really deserve this shot?
Oh, no.
Here he is, right?
No,
I mean, how
absolutely
insane
not.
I feel like anytime we bring up Brock Lesnar,
no.
anytime we bring him up, we have to go back and just remind people of how insane it is that he's even there, and that it's happening.
Sure.
But we still have to deal with the fact that it's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't spend any time, debating whether or not it should. I mean, I get why it's happening from a business standpoint, and that's, in the end, all you really need to consider. But, oh, no. I mean, there is no, numerical justification for it.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the call, Marco. Let's go on to Hal from Chicago.
Numerical in terms of rankings. I mean, financially, there's all the justification in the world is what I meant to say.
What's up, Hal?
Yeah, man, I got the bad signal. I heard you guys were talking WWE again, so I had to call in. Jesus Christ, what's the matter with you?
Well, I don't know I don't know if we are. That's the blurred line is. I don't know if we are talking WWE, if we're talking mixed martial arts, because they're kind of overlapping now in this crazy world.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is not overlapping. Eric Andrews versus Khalil Roundtree, the battle of the light skin versus the dark skin. So it's a very important fight in the black community, and Renato Laranja likes to make a big deal out of this, so he's going to be in Andrews' corner. And I don't know, man. It's a tough fight. Andrews favored the Alabama Crimson Tide.
What's more important, Hal, is the over-under. All right? I've actually shied away from who I think is going to fight. I think what's interesting is the over-under.
Yes.
What do you think that over-under is?
You are smart, man.
A round?
I mean, it's 2.5. It's got to be 1.5. Yeah. Okay. Let me tell you right now. Right here on.
What do you think?
I would think I would think it would have to be 3.5 minutes.
3.5 minutes?
Yeah.
Which is also on my Tinder.
Okay. All right. So it goes. You say 1.5?
I would say about 1.5 rounds maybe.
Oh, 1.5 rounds. I think it's 3.5 minutes. I think it's first round, and if they're breaking it down by length of round, it's 3.5 minutes of a round.
What is it, Hal? You got it?
It's 1.5 rounds. Over. The over is favored at -135. The comeback on under is +110. So 1.5. And again, this might be different because usually, two black guys, they don't like to hurt each other, so it's going to go over usually. So I'm still going to stick with that. But I'm going to say that it's a riskier bet because it is light skin versus dark skin, so you might see them actually throw at it. Khalil has got that big right hand. So, but the pick here is over 1.5 rounds, easy money.
All right, man. Thank you for the call. We are going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we're going to tease something that has to do with a theory of mine and one championship. It's going to be a fun time. It's MMA Junkie Radio, Sirius XM Fight Nation, Channel 156. We will be right back. I thought you'd be bobbing your head, Richard. It's a great song.
Darkness imprisoning me.
We are back. MMA Junkie Radio. Gorgeous George is off today. He will be back tomorrow. Dave LaGreca will join us tomorrow. And then Dan Tom comes back on Friday. We'll talk a little bit more of UFC 236. Great main event. Great co-main event. The card's pretty fun. I think it's going to be a fun time. I'm going to give you a theory, Richard. You tell me what you think.
Okay.
Tito Ortiz says he wants to come back. He's retired, 3 times now? But he wants to come back for another fight. I don't think it's going to be Golden Boy because that didn't do too well.
Mm-hmm.
That's where he fought Chuck Liddell. I don't know that it's going to be Bellator. But you know what sounded right to me? When they signed Vitor Belfort at one championship, I thought, who's he going to fight? It's got to be somebody that kind of makes sense. That's in that same boat, right? So then I thought, could they be getting Rich Franklin to come out of retirement? He kind of points that he doesn't want to really do that. And I thought there's always that Tito Ortiz, but he's retired. Well, guess what? He wants to fight. And I bet you that's what's going to go down at one championship. I bet you they're going to match him up with Vitor Belfort. Am I crazy?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to yes and you. This is the first rule of improv. Whatever you say, I say yes and then I add to it for a successful improvisation. I think that I was stunned at the lack of conversation that the debuts of Eddie Alvarez and particularly Mighty Mouse got when it came to one the other day. I mean, I realize that, you know, there's a reason why Mighty Mouse was traded for Ben Askren, and the UFC felt like they never could get, you know, Mighty Mouse off the ground as far as like a box office pay-per-view draw. I know all that backstory. But all that being said, still, you're having arguably the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world fighting. And unless I just wasn't reading the right sites, I didn't see anywhere near the amount of coverage I thought that would get, even though it's one, okay? And, of course, Eddie Alvarez was on that card, too. I think that if one goes with your idea of Vitor Belfort and Tito Ortiz, they will actually get more coverage and more headlines than they've ever gotten before for anything they've ever done, and I think that's been proven when Tito has fought Chuck, because even though the fight was a mess and the card was a mess and everything, it got talked about way more. Bellator has shown us that when they've put old guys together, you know, in these Legends-type matches. So I think it would be the most high-visibility day of one's existence if they did that.
There's something about Tito Ortiz that just makes you want to tune in. I don't know why. I can never explain it. I actually saw that first fight. Saw it live. I believe it was here at Mandalay Bay. It was a 3-round fight. And that's kind of the fight that I always point to when I say enough with 5 rounds if a title's not on the line. That was a fun fight. I think round 1 went to Tito. Round 2 was kind of in the middle. And I think round 3 went to Vitor. Tito runs out in the stairs, but out into the audience. But anyways, we got to wrap up here. It's been a fun time. Thank you so much, Richard, for coming in.
My pleasure.
And co-hosting.
I
had a blast getting to know you here. And I know that people are going to say, I thought you knew him. Yeah, I thought I did too.
Just when you thought
you got to hear the commercial breaks. It's me and Josh basically going, what? Are you serious?
We'll save something for next time.
Yeah.
Shit is crazy.
Fun time, though. We will be back tomorrow with Dave LaGreca with Gorgeous George. And we'll have a couple other guests, too, lined up here. They're kind of in the works. But until then, you guys hang tight. Thank you for joining us, and be champions.